I'm Frank Alaimo. I'm the manager of Classroom Technologies at UNLV, and I'll hand this to Andy for 1 second.
And I'm Andy Borts. Bare bones title, Senior Instructional Technology Support Specialist. It's not bare bones at all.
We'll get to our roles in a little bit. So, can anybody think about what's the next slide after that? Anybody have an idea? Throw something out there. What just happened recently we all went through? Right? Okay. So, that happened, right? Did you feel that? You feel that? It sucked, right? That was terrible. We all went through it, right? So on our campus particularly, in 2020, we all got sent home. I'm going to assume most of you all, same thing, depending on your locales of where you were, what your state governments were doing, all that. I was literally building classrooms out over break and got sick myself. I actually got sick in 19, came back, infected my whole team. Turns out later, 3 months later, we found out, hey, there's this COVID thing. Went and got a blood test. You're pregnant. You had COVID. So I was like, oh, cool. So March 15th, they tossed us all off campus. Literally, went through and said, get out. You're done. Shut the buildings down. You're not coming back until we figure out what's up. So for 2 weeks go by, and I got bored. And I went to my boss. I said, look, I'm going back to campus. I don't care what you do. You can fire me. It's the safest place I can be. There's no one there. I got things that need to get done. And my guys, we all came in, 4 or 5 of us. We rotated through, and somebody went to this building, and somebody went to that building, and we got caught up. And we got caught up to the point where we had all of our projects done, and we were playing Xbox on a giant 400-inch screen, right? Well, in February, a year later, the provost called and said, what are we going to do? We did a little bit of this and a little bit of that in the between the late summer of this and here. They were 20% on campus. They came back a little bit. We're trying to figure out what was what. And then this one happened. Came to me and said, give me your biggest swing you could throw at the classrooms. Money's no object. We got you covered. Okay, cool. Took us a month. Luckily, my team already had something in the works that we were getting ready to deploy anyway. So we kind of were ahead of the curve. Deployed 32 rooms with what we call Rebel Flex. It's our Rebel Flex classrooms. It's a flexible, asynchronous, synchronous classroom learning. And then in January we did this. February, here we are discussing the future. So in less than a year to here, it's like, wow, this went quick, good. Now what? Well, what's this say? I'm not a quiet person. Most of you that in here do know me. I will shoot you straight and tell you exactly what's what. I went back to this guy, and I said, hey, remember all that stuff we bought last year? In 4 more years, you're going to need to replace it. You know the stuff I put in 10 years ago that I still haven't replaced? Yeah. So we'll get that in a second. All of that work that was done with this team and this team. And the reason why I'm showing you this, actually I just shared it with Doug not too long ago. This is my group. This is where Andy fits in. The CIO that we just, I would say, inherited around this time is above my boss, and then the provost is above that gentleman, right? So my team is here. Andy's team is here. I have to put the hardware in. My team selects it. We talk to the faculty, get some opinions, figure out what we want. I put the hardware in. My team programs it, makes it work. But the back end of that program, where Panopto is, where Zoom is, we had Web Campus at the time, that's not my team. That's his team. So everything that we do, we hold his hand. Because if I'm not happy, he's not going to be happy. Or if my team does something that he doesn't need or doesn't want to support, or the faculty is complaining about to him, it trickles to us. So everything we do is lockstep. So if your teams are built like this, or sometimes they're built like all of this, sometimes you guys are under the same umbrellas, sometimes you're not even in the same silo. Sometimes it's an act of God to get this group to talk to this group. Well, we're lucky. So keep in mind, if you're ever restructuring your teams, building your teams, administration is asking you, find your pain points. Thankfully, in 2018, I was on his hiring committee, And luckily, we got his area to stay close to my area because it helps. So back to this part. Circling back to, actually kind of put my slides out of order there, so I'll own up to that one. But what happened, right? So COVID came, people went nuts, panicked, right? It's everybody hop on Best Buy, buy everything you could, go to Amazon, buy every box you can, whatever you can get from your dealers if you had the money, right? So if you had a solution in place and you had the money, you were able to buy it, great. If you didn't, you got whatever you could to keep your campus running, because it wasn't just universities. Everybody, Google and FedEx and all the casinos in Vegas, everybody was buying something to go remote. So it wasn't just higher ed. We were usually, we know our buying cycles. If we were a July 1 university, we're buying everything in May and June, installing over the summer or planning for it and such. Most of us, if we're on that same cycle, I wouldn't say we're competing with each other, but there's times non-COVID related that I'm waiting a little longer in the summer for some of my gear because a lot of schools are buying the same stuff, right? Whether it's projectors, flat panels, microphones, whatever have you. Well, during this, it was even worse. It was buy what you can to stay alive. We all know about that. And private schools. How many private schools are in here? I know you didn't get any money. You got some, though, didn't you? Yeah. Smaller schools got some. You guys turned it down, but it was offered to you? Wow. Good for you. Well, it's Stanford. Yeah. But anyway, that's a lot of scratch, right? $14 billion they handed out. And that $14 billion went for everything. Anything and everything on your campus that you could say is related to learning or remote or whatever you wanted to call it, any way you want to put a bow on it. Look at, we all fudged the system. We all bought things that were just plugged into something that needed to be upgraded. We upgraded it. I didn't just buy a microphone for my classrooms. I didn't buy a camera for my classrooms. I gutted that sucker and put all new gear in top to bottom. Why? Because that won't work without that. And my controller was like, okay, signed off on it. That's the way it worked. Because essentially all you say is you're building a new classroom. The classroom solution had to be there. That was the loophole. So all of us spent that money. The one thing that's up here, can somebody spot the one thing that isn't hardware? Come on, interactive, right? Oops. So this guy is where this guy comes in. So we have Canvas. We go through Panopto. So we have the LMS, the CMS, we have all that. Hardware guy finds the box, gives this guy, makes it work, right? Well, there's a subscription fee to that. That money comes out of this as well. Well, what do I do when I run out of this? And 2026 shows up, and the bill for this shows up for the next year, right? They're not only not accounting for my hardware in 5 years, they have to account for that in 5 years or whatever the contract was when they signed it. So prior to the incident, we'll call it, my campus, I did not have a replacement plan. I had what we called a slush fund. I would go to our campus facilities director and I'd say, hey, Dave, how much money you got? He's like, what do you need? I need to do 30 rooms. I got to get upgraded. And he'd slide me $700,000. And then the next year I'd go to him. He'd come to me. Hey, I got $1 million left over. What do you need to do? And this was great for 5 years. It took us 6 years to redo 190 rooms on my campus. So from 2013 to 2019, we refreshed every single one of our general purpose rooms on campus. Now, 2013 we started. 2019 we ended. Wouldn't logic tell you add the 6 on to 13 and we get to 19, 2020 comes, we're ready to replace that first set of rooms, right? Well, 2020 came, we have COVID money now. So that first set of rooms was replaced with that CARES Act money. Okay, so we're doing okay. Halfway through the pilot program, we added 30 more rooms. And I targeted those 2014 rooms. Well, now those 2015 rooms are up this year as 10 years old. So let's circle back now. Was it CapEx that gentleman gave me that money, or was it OpEx? That was slush fund money. That fell under CapEx. That was not my operating. I don't have an operating budget. I don't have a replacement plan. So in your campuses, when you're doing your projects that are new construction builds, tenant improvements, CapEx money, we talked about it yesterday in one of the talks. You're building a new building. You get all this new tech. It went in with the original budget of $50 million to build your building. Well, when you're sitting at that table with the provost and the users of that building, and you say, hey, in 5 years, just remember, I need $2 million to replace all this gear. The network guys are getting that money because, they'll cry if that network switch doesn't get redone. So that closet's getting redone. So what I've been doing lately on my campus is when I go to these construction meetings or when I go to these CapEx meetings, I put my rooms on their schedule. So what I'm fighting for now is every 10 years those switches are getting replaced. Maximum in my room's 10 years. My rooms need to get replaced. And 10 years is a long time. I want them done in 5. We started to do 50, 60 projectors at a clip, 50, 60 lecterns at a clip, parts and pieces. We realized that's not feasible for us. For as big as we were, our rooms don't not get used a lot. We are packed every day. So whether it's this room, that room, this room, that room, they all have the same amount of hours on them daily. Occasionally, departmental spaces don't get used as much, but in GP, they all take a beating. So in 5 years, 6 years, maybe 7, I will try and gut the entire room again. And if I have a projector that's lasting longer or a processor that's lasting longer, it'll go on a shelf, and that's my spare. It's my emergency. We all do emergency stuff, but that's kind of how we do things. When it comes to the operating expense, like I was saying, operating I don't have, CapEx I go to the school for. So when those network switches are getting replaced, I'm trying to fight now to get my rooms replaced. And sometimes if you put it in perspective of that, something else is getting done at the same time. Well, why can't mine get done at the same time? So that's, check back next year. I'll let you know in Utah if it's working out or not. But I got a meeting next week to discuss exactly what we were just talking about. Kind of wrapped it all up in here and what I was saying there. I'm going to hand it off to Andy because at this part, we talked about the hardware. We talked about the headache that I have. Well, during COVID, our Rebel Flex classrooms, that was our initiative. But that came with a whole bag of trash. That bag of trash is in Andy's pocket right now. What we have to do now is keep the faculty happy, keep the lights on, keep the wheels spinning. And hardware is hardware. My guys will keep making things work. But ultimately, the instructors don't care what's in that box. As long as that gets on the screen and it gets captured, a box is a box to them. To get the software working, to get the new initiatives in front of the faculty, to get them to buy in, that's where he comes in.
Might be taking you on an inadvertent safari when you see how many times I reference the word elephant in these slides. If anybody wants to play a drinking game later, I'm down. So, like Frank was saying, from the classroom perspective, the rooms are packed. There's very few even windows to get in to do any kind of maintenance or anything. And, I feel for his team because there are times where they just want to get in there and rectify something, but who knows if you can rectify it in 10 minutes. Plus, you've got people hanging around 3 minutes after asking questions to the instructor, and then the other instructors trying to get in and get themselves set up. So taking this a little bit beyond what Frank's scope of his team's mission is, I go back to that early time in March of 2020 when a lot of us on the e-learning side and on the online education side were all in our faculty center, essentially saying, there could be a possibility that we're going to need to teach remote. We're going to offer some workshops for you on how to use Canvas and how to use lecture recording, not even in a classroom, using it on your own devices, and even video conferencing. Because I was hired on as essentially the lecture capture video conferencing guy. Later on, you'll see that it has gone well beyond that scope. Because the name e-learning, I don't even think we know what the E stands for. Everything.
Okay, so
I can justify that now. Everything is perfect.
Now we have everything.
Let's
We're going back to ask my boss because we don't even know.
bring it. It's just a formality letter. Yeah, that's why we're going on this safari, right? So basically, we had this never-ending line of people coming in, whether they were forced to learn it or whether they were saying, you know what, I think it's time. You would not believe how many people on our campus did not even know what Canvas was, or let alone that we had Canvas as an LMS. Submit your paper by email, I'll grade it for you. But remember, this was 2020. I was hired in 2018. So we had lecture capture on campus. It was going into its third year. We had video conferencing on our campus. It was going into its third year. The one commonality that we have is that for as much as the classrooms are packed, the services that we support are just as packed with constant usage, new use cases, and just a growing subset of users. So from my perspective, we excel at the support piece of it on the e-learning side. And even just talking with his boss before I got out here, I said, that's the strength of our e-learning team. We've got a really good support system. I would put it up against any support system we've got anywhere. But we were noticing, even as we move forward past the pandemic, we had a lot more people using lecture capture in the classrooms. We had a lot more people who were saying, I have this special use case that I want to use for it. So we were seeing a high increase in support tickets, but they weren't just tickets about, I can't log in. They were tickets about, come to my TED Talk. I'm trying to do this. And you don't really give me much leeway to book time with you to have a TED Talk. And normally we didn't do that because we figured we're on the support side and we're going to be supporting the bare bones items to say, like, we'll help you log in, or we'll help you make sure that your camera is the correct selected source, or your mic sounds overdriven. We have some ideas on that. They have gotten so sophisticated now with all the tools that they're using because they're so seasoned on our campus that now we're starting to really get deep into almost essentially helping them design every activity or every course that they're trying to incorporate that activity in. So not only that, but it's also a help me on my time kind of thing. I don't want to go to your training. I know the basics of the tool. Don't tell me when to come. You're going to come on my time. That's what we're dealing with now. It's a complete paradigm shift from what we're used to. But the best part about even something like with lecture capture is I think there's a lot of opportunity that we have to be able to say, look, your room does lecture capture. We don't really have too many things on the lecterns because you don't want to overclutter them. There's already a gargantuan amount of information on there as it is. So it's just something that people would glide over. So this is where we had to start to get our brain juices flowing because for just as packed as the classrooms are, the usage of all of our tools continues to grow. Case in point, we compared spring and fall of 21 to the spring and fall of 24. So just when we were starting to get everything back in gear post-pandemic, based on that, compare that to a full cycle year. So you notice higher video numbers, but less hours recorded in the spring and fall terms, mainly because we attribute that to people were testing the thing out. So maybe they were doing like an 8-second test to make sure that they sounded good. They were just getting on the bandwagon to get to use this stuff. And then you go to spring and fall of 24, you also see that the number of hours recorded is still pretty steady, but in the fall of 24, you notice that was our highest number of videos created yet. And what we've noticed is a lot more students are getting involved with projects that they want or used for recording. Instructors are saying, we have this tool you can use. Let's use it. Let's try to go outside the box. I won't have you write a paper. I want you to introduce yourself on video.
Keep in mind, this area here, why that spiked, that was our pilot program for the Rebel Flex. This is after rolling out 100 plus rooms on campus. So the pilot program was limited to the 60 instructors. Yeah. So that was a smaller subset of people. So that was piling that number in. They were forced to record. This, we're not forcing anyone anymore. So forced to be that high, bought in to make it this high over those 3 years.
Was there a change in leadership in academic affairs provost's office during this period right here?
No,
No, there wasn't.
The change is going on right now as we speak.
Yep.
Okay.
Yep.
There's a lot of interns right now on campus.
Okay.
Definitely.
Somebody.
but but like if you look at the classroom recording side, again, these were where we were starting to say like you need to record. And then you've heard the phrase, what was once considered a luxury is now an expectation. There's so many more use cases now and so many more classrooms that have this capability. The question is this enough? I don't think it is. I think we can keep going. And that's where the brain juices keep flowing. So taking a look at some of the things that we're looking at currently for more lecture recording incentivization, we definitely are communicating with our accessibility team about enabling automated captioning for all new recordings. And the reason why we're doing that is because anytime instructors record, they have this idea that they want to reuse it. They want to reuse it all the time. Heck, it's something like if you had a VHS tape and you want to put it in the back of the closet or in the back of your media center, if anybody still has one of those, and then you decide 20 years later, I really want that content. That seems to be the MO of any kind of content that gets recorded, especially if they're using it in the classroom. But if you're going to use it beyond your existing audience, you have to caption it. And that's the pain point. That was originally what turned people off from wanting to do any recordings, was because that was a stipulation of it, especially if you were going to reuse it in the future beyond your existing audience. So we are making sure that once we put this idea into a pilot phase, that we get some buy-in, especially from the accessibility team, because there still has to be a human element to verify that those captions are correct. If your caption service is 99.7% accurate, you still got to check proper names and things like that, right? So there is still a human element involved. One of the things that we're actually doing coming up this summer, actually in a few weeks, I think we're going to actually turn this feature on. We're going to do an auto assignment folder creation option. So what that means is, in the past, when instructors would reach out to our help desk, they would say, I want my students to create videos in Panopto, but they can't. They don't see this create button like I do. And we tell them, oh, you have to create an assignment folder. It's a bit of a clunky workflow, but we get why it happens. Now we're starting to get 8 tickets, 12 tickets, 16 tickets, not just from instructors, but also students. My instructor wants me to create video, but I can't. We find out that the instructor creates a fake folder that's called assignments, but it's not the assignment folder workflow they're supposed to follow. So we're trying to really milk this for all it's worth and really open it up in a better way. That's one good key right there. Even though the Panopto settings say we don't recommend turning this on, we're going to do it. And then another thing that really came up was people go into the classroom and they don't want to look at 8 different pamphlets around the lectern to see what the room can do or what the contact phone numbers are for things. So we reached out to our labs team and said, what would be really cool is if we could use some real estate on the desktop post login and have maybe a link to the classroom's detail page, tell you what hardware is in there, tell you what capabilities it has, even maybe an express link to a scheduling form if you want somebody to record all of their content in the classroom automatically. Just things that could really make that number that you saw on the previous chart balloon to where we think it could go and where we think it should go based on what students are expecting these days. Told you we were going on a safari, and I have to be careful if I mention these 2 letters that you see on the bottom of the screen, because sometimes that elephant trunk could slap me in the face, and I don't mean Frank's arm. But the big thing about increasing the visibility of classroom capabilities is super important. Having that link on the desktop would be really helpful. The main concern that our labs team has brought up to us is that they don't want their desktop PCs to become digital signage. Because somebody could see that and say, well, if you're able to put information about what your room does, why can't my department put information about an event that's going to happen in here in 2 weeks? So sure, we get it, but at the same time, we have control of that. So we can set the guidelines for that and make it work to our advantage for the purpose that a classroom should be delivering, right? And then, of course, the thing that is so common is that the hybrid arrangements are here to stay. We are going to have to figure out that beyond just that walk-in or phone call, people want support on their time in their own way. I've done a lot of virtual calls lately, and it's been more of a hands-on demo versus a technical support session. So at the same time, I mentioned that I'm also the video conferencing guy. So anything that relates to Zoom, or in the past, think of what a spider weaves and add X after it. That's what we supported beforehand. But notice that before we had Zoom, this was our conferencing data. And the only reason why we didn't really have more data on this was because a lot of folks had already said, you know what, I'm not using that spider web weaving thing with an X after it. I already have a Zoom account. I'm going to use that because I like it better. So that's one of the reasons why these numbers were down. And this was also around the time when we were doing that Rebel Flex pilot to get faculty involved to actually have multiple audiences in multiple locations be able to participate synchronously. But now what we're noticing as we go into a full-blown year is that the meeting numbers are still consistent, but notice that the number of hours are higher. And to be honest, the meeting hours are usually calculated per attendee, so we're having a lot more attendees in these sessions. And even from an administrative standpoint, our team has now gone beyond just supporting this kind of stuff in Canvas. Now we're also the team where the provost's office will come to us and say, we're going to need to interview candidates for a dean position. Can you help us with moderation? Or can you help us find somebody who can be a good moderator? We don't offer moderation services on the e-learning side for good reason, because then nobody would ever see us again. It's always a luxury to have somebody in your Zoom session be able to look down the participant list and find out if somebody unmuted themselves and they're eating their Cheetos. And then they can just mute them on the fly like that.
The Zoom that Andy's talking about, it's not just the classes. Administration-wise, we support them as well. So all the conference rooms and the building resources that I'm putting around the campus, the hundreds of conference rooms that are there, every time we're on a Zoom call, it's all being tracked. Every time that somebody's doing, like you said, the provost, they're doing interviews, whatever, what have you. So it's not just the classes, it's all administration, and all of that is into these numbers. That's what the spike was, because the work from homers are still home.
And going back to the support side of things, numbers go up means more people are likely going to need support. And, for a subset of users, such as our faculty, once they're in the flow, they're pretty good to go. But once you start to get the new users on board and then you present all the resources that you have, that's really a godsend for us, because then it gets people encouraged to use it. Then they can use word of mouth to have other people use it. But at the same time, you can't just say, Jeannie, you're free. You have to be ready to support folks because of the exponentially increasing number of use cases that we're seeing for not just video conferencing, but any tool that we support. No idea is too far-fetched these days. So from our end, we also had to open up the playbook a little bit because we were really just relying on people submitting tickets. But people can't find our support portal to log a ticket on their own. So they send an email to the help desk. It waits in a queue for 2 days and then finally gets farmed to the correct department. Frank's team knows that the best because, of course, they have their own help desk. They have a subset in the ticketing system. But somebody will say, the projector's broken. And it sits in this unassigned queue because nobody realizes that there's an actual direct portal you can actually contact and a phone number you can call if you need that kind of urgent support. We're kind of in that same boat on the Panopto and Zoom side. So we do have Slack internally for our IT department, and soon, we think, it might be Enterprise. Anybody have Enterprise Slack?
Anyone can Slack anyone at any time.
Oh, yeah. Anyone can Slack anyone at any time. Oh, man. Eek. Well, so in the meantime, one of the things that would always happen is our help desk would try to ping our e-learning team and say, I've got this person on the phone and they're having a Zoom problem. It's like, well, that's very helpful. Thank you. A person on the phone with a Zoom problem. Tell me more, Mr. Science. So what we ended up doing was we wanted to give the help desk a little bit of an outlet so that they didn't have to remember who was on the e-learning team, because let's face it, I would say maybe about 40% of the folks on our IT team don't even know what the e-learning team is or what they support. We got a Google ticket the other day, and I'm like, we have a Google team for that. So what we ended up doing was creating some workflows where we could just have that help desk person, assuming that their customer is on the phone, get all the information we need, because every time we would get pinged, we would have to say something like, what's the name of the customer? Then they'd say that on the phone. What's the name of the customer? So you can imagine just having to type all of that out and then wait for the response from the user. I would have probably hung up 3 years ago by the time this call was actually making any progress. So finally, we put some workflows in Slack within our e-learning channel so that anybody could go in here and give us the information we need immediately so that we could at least do some deeper diving. So we have one for Panopto, we have one for Zoom, and pretty much it has expedited our troubleshooting time by at least 80%. Because all we're doing now is sleuthing based on the information we're given. Now, every once in a while, we'll get a wrong course code, or, somebody's email address may be in a different domain versus the ones that we actually know and are familiar with, so we have questions there. But this gives us the bread and butter of what we need to be able to do what we need to do. And this all ties back into the fact that the services are being used at such a high rate that we need the support for it. And we haven't really been told we're getting any more people. So these are the ways to kind of cut that down. I don't know who that nut is, but apparently I heard he was taking you all on a safari today. So one of the other things, we were actually talking with this with a few of you yesterday. We use a tool now when we're responding to tickets called ProKeys, and it was actually our student employee who was named Outstanding Graduate of the Year 2024. Woo, go Sophia. She actually found this and said, this would be really cool to have if we were going to be templating some responses, or even just to build the bones of the response, and then we could insert some of our own data. So notice, on this little example over here, we have some ticket templates relating to Panopto. So if somebody says, I want to schedule my recordings, they fill out the form, but they forgot to add the Panopto recordings link to their Canvas course. We have a template for responding to them with just a couple of button clicks. They get a response from us, and then they don't have to wait for us to formulate an entire response over and over again. We do humanize them, though. We will change the grading. We'll pop in a few of our own little quirks, but we really want to make sure that we save our own time by having these things in the can. So notice on the end of this slide, it says insert information where prompted. That might be a case where we say, here's the room you're in that you said you were going to be teaching in. Here's your course. Here are the days you're recording. Here are the times you're recording. We can just add that ad hoc, basically, and have it ready to go. Another one that we're working on here, which has actually been launched earlier this year, is we wanted to kind of expand our consultation calendar to something beyond just, do you need technical support for this? Because everybody wants us to come to their TED Talk. So we have worked it out so that we've created our own schedule with a lot more availability for folks to be able to just click on a time that they're available, give us a little information about what they're looking for, and lo and behold, we now know what to expect when we're going to do a consultation with them. Maybe that hasn't permeated everybody yet. We still have people who ask for help with, I don't know if anybody's ever heard of Slido. It's a polling tool that's owned by Cisco. We have it as an enterprise, though, right now, even though it's kind of a weird arrangement, but more details if you want them afterward. But basically, sometimes they'll say, I need Slido help. Even though we say, to help us best prepare for your consultation, please explain your need or technical issue below, including as much detail as possible. I need help with Slido is a pretty wide open book. So it's one of those things where you hope that it helps, and you hope that over time you can start to get it a little more seasoned and get the details you need. But it's just another way that we've had to amp up support without having any extra personnel. And then not only are we having to support the existing tools, but remember, we're the e-learning, and whoever said the E was for everything, this is probably the ultimate bow tie right here. There's a little bravado you can have when folks in your department say, we're going to give this to you because we know you can handle it. That could be a lot of things, we could be miracle workers, but that's not really a sustainable model. So things that we're looking at right now are we're doing an OpenAI ChatGPT pilot program, which was completely out of the blue. Has anybody in here actually, do they think right now that they are by default, even though it may not be listed, does anybody think that they are now the AI department? Oh, I'm so sorry. But it's one of those things where the folks in charge of this came to us and said, we know you can do this, so spin it up. So we did. And now we're in the pilot phase, probably going to wrap it up soon. But I think that now there's a never-ending expectation where we're going to be supporting tools like this. We're also going to probably be supporting Enterprise Slack when it comes online, which is more of an administrative tool, in my selfish opinion. So how does that fit with e-learning? It's kind of one of those things where I told Frank, e-learning kind of feels like the attic right now. You got to put it up there, but you don't know why it's going to be up there or how long it's going to be up there. You just know that things can go in the attic and you can retrieve them when you need it. It's kind of how my group is perceiving this at the moment. So for ChatGPT, we're doing the license provisioning. We're doing GPT integration requests. We're also trying to figure out the things that we may need to troubleshoot with it. Most of the time, if somebody says, I have an AI problem, we say, can you ask your AI if it can do it? Just the other day, we've heard internet won't work. We've heard the classroom won't work. Very, very broad. For the very first time, late last week, we got a ticket that said, the AI doesn't work. So it's like the last thing you want to hear with a service, just that broad thing. So they said that they were trying to ingest, or they were trying to give it information to create a restaurant menu, and it wasn't generating a picture for them. So they wanted us to generate the picture for them. And I was like, well, wait a minute. I don't even know what kind of license you have or what you're using. So we had to do a little digging on that one, but I think we got our message across that we're not the AI content generation department. And then the last thing I have on here as far as challenges, our software procurement process is not really very transparent to people. So we have a bunch of people, of course, who also want us to support tools, but they'll give them to us to research them. And originally I was thinking to myself, we're not really the software research department either. We have a software management team. But just like with the other stuff, they come to e-learning because we know we can do it. But that software procurement process involves accessibility. It involves a data and security analysis. It also involves making sure that you don't have to use a purchase card with a recurring charge, which, heads up, if you are trying to sell something and you expect a credit card purchase with recurring charges, that does not look good for universities. They want purchase orders for everything. Purchase orders. Friendly advice. So we're actually, roped into helping out with the software procurement process and trying to make it more transparent. So you see, it just kind of goes all over the place. And this is all in tandem with all the extra traffic we're getting with all the services we support. And just kind of putting a bow on that, I'm kind of like in a hardware bind here because even though I'm not supporting hardware, we have no standards. So bring us home.
I have the standards. But did the pandemic do that to anybody? Was the new standard no standards? You just grabbed what you grabbed to make your rooms work, right? Some of us waited. Some of us said, I'm not changing my standards. I'm gonna sit and wait 6 months for that hardware to arrive. I'm gonna deal with it. And unfortunately worked out for us. We had a plan in place. We were to pull the trigger. We got the gear that we needed for the most part for our pilot program. But a lot of folks, they didn't keep their standards. Did your standards change based on the new technology and the new initiatives that were involved? Did you have to roll up your team and say, we have to add this, or we have to reduce that, or something to that effect? Current issue, I just added that this morning, the tariff, right? Because what world we're in now, it's the new chip shortage or the new whatever you want, a new buzzword. If anybody had tariff on their bingo card, you just won. And Andy was saying earlier, user requests, whether it's software or whether it's procurement of what's the the AI thing, the Copilot or whatever we're using for that, right? Does that change like any of the standards that we're having? Did you even have standards before? Some schools have multiple control systems on campus. Some schools have silos where their business school does one thing and the fine arts team does another thing. And, so there's that. Thankfully, on our campus, everybody has to come through us because if you want me to support your room, that's going to be the same thing that's in my room. So how many schools here are brick and mortar campuses and your president and your administration said, get back to school, we're on campus, that's it, right? Well, that's what we heard. We're supposedly back to 100%. I think the number's more like 90. The good part is they finally realized that some of these classes can be online, and the kids are starting to realize, I don't need to go to this Math 101 class. I could take that online. Why do I have to get up and do this, right? So they're freeing up classroom spaces for the classrooms that need to be on campus. So if you can move that general course with 50 people in it that can just sit online and take it, do it, right? So that's what our school ended up doing. Like Andy said earlier, remote, it's here forever. We're not even going to talk about it. So what do we got? Got 5 minutes left. Does that make anybody uncomfortable? Right? AV as a service? I hate it. I don't want any part of it. I am AV as a service. I don't need someone to come into my campus and tell me what to do. I'm not calling somebody what to do. People call me. That's my job, right? Why would I pay someone to come in and just take my money? Because you still need a team on campus. That team is going to be hired by an outsourced company because they're not going to send resources. They're going to have one dude there. I could say that because I have colleagues in town that are going through this right now, and their AV as a service company has changed ownership, and they went downhill. And that buzzword showed up not too long ago with our new CIO, and he's probably going to watch this and listen to it. Hi, Kavanch. I finally got him convinced that that's a bad idea.
Can you give an example of that?
Say there's a company called XYZ, and they are contracted by your school to live here and take money to send someone to break fix support in your classrooms, but they don't work for your university. It's literally all it is. There is no silver bullet for it. So depending on the contract you write, they have to come in and either refresh your equipment every 5 years, 3 years, whatever it is, but you're paying millions of dollars for that equipment to be refreshed. On the other hand, the university pays for the equipment. It goes in on their dime. The people come in and support it on their dime. So there's two different cycles on how you can do it. There's actually probably more than two different cycles. I'm only familiar with the two that I see, and both of them do not work, especially when you have campuses that have, like in our town, the place I'm talking about, has 7 campuses around and one dude to run around and fix all the stuff. Doesn't work that way. That's why I'm not happy with that, and that's why I'm building out this. So for the last 3 years, I've been the manager. I was part of the team for 10 years before that, but for the last 3, I'm the manager. So I'm actually now going, and I'm going back to my CIO, and I said, I need an install team. I already have a program team. I have a design team. I need an install team. I want one throat to choke. I don't want to call an integrator anymore. I love my integrator. Don't get me wrong. I want to be my own team. Just drop me boxes. We'll handle it. If it gets to a large enough project that I can't handle it, then I'll bring in them to pull wire and that sort of stuff.
You also have student expert?
I have 8 student workers. Yeah. So if you...
Because you're also training them and providing.
Correct. The 8 student workers we have here, he was a former student worker. He was a former student worker. He was a former student worker. I created this position for him. He came into that position. We created this position. This was my former position. And 8 student workers. And one of the guys in here is about to take that position. So if you build it, they will come. If you can feed your student team to work as students, and you can keep and retain them, do it. Pay them whatever you can. Do it.
You can't do that without outsourced AV.
You absolutely can. Correct.
Frank, is the rationale on the AV as service kind of like, oh, I don't need to hire more FTE.
Yes.
I don't have to do that.
Correct.
It's an ongoing expense, but they don't have the ownership that an in-house team does ever.
Correct.
Ever.
And at my school, being a state institution, benefits, retirement, it's all taken care of.
Yeah.
That other school, they're also state employees. I don't see the rub. We are under the same NSHE group. It's just one is handled one way or one's handled another way.
You're saying the SA, AVS support are hired as state employees?
No. The school that's there is the state employees.
Well, it also shows up as OpEx, not CapEx.
Yeah.
Correct.
So it's,
Right, and that's the reason higher ups get excited about
Yeah.
this, is it turns an CapEx.
Yeah.
OpEx expense.
Right.
It's not necessarily a good, I think,
Right.
but that's their excitement.
Yeah, that's their excitement until at the end of the year when they see the support ticket number that is in the gutter because classrooms are down for 4, 5, 10 days because they don't have someone to come over and fix it.
Right, but the sales pitch for that is, no, that won't happen because we'll have an SLA, and you will hold us to that.
Correct, and that's
With you, you have the reality.
yeah, that's a sales pitch. It's not reality.
I'm the choir preaching.
Yeah.
But that's when you're trying to figure out why on earth would anybody want to do this.
Right.
It's because people who look at bean counters are like, oh, less capex, that's good.
Yeah.
OpEx is very controllable, that's good. And then they stop. That's the end of the thought process for some.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then Frank, who manages AV as service? Is that you? Is that you? Do you have to?
It's the me at that place, yes.
Or no? Are you? Because somebody's got to be a point of contact for that AV as service
Yeah.
team. It isn't going to be a bean counter expert.
Right.
usually it is, because that's the relationship. If that's
Correct.
some kind of portal that the individual users submit tickets to, then it's a faceless, nameless entity, and
Yeah.
it is what it is.
This is good stuff. I thank you guys for coming. Andy and I, we thank you. We're going to jump outside. If anybody wants to keep rapping about this, we can. There's another group coming in. I don't want to hold them up. But, yeah, this is really good stuff. Thank you all for coming.
Every night?